Okay, we're live.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Good afternoon. This is the meeting of the MSAD11 Policy Committee. Thanks everybody for showing up. So I'll call the meeting to order. It's been a little bit since we've met, I think. So hopefully everybody's had a chance to review the agenda. I think some of it we had talked a little bit about in one of our recent board meetings. So yeah, if you could kind of guide us through where we're at on these.
Sure. First, for the public, just to make it clear who is here on behalf of the board, Tony V, who is the chair of the policy committee. We then have Matt Lillybridge. We have Alyssa Tracy, Matt Marshall, John Umland, and then Mr. Kempton, Chad Kempton is here, Terry McGuire. Terry is the director of of technology. Mr. Kempton is the principal of the high school, and Pat Hopkins, superintendent. So an update is that the federal government recently changed the Title IX laws regarding sexual harassment. And those new laws go into effect on August 14th. And as a result, there is new policies that the school district must implement in advance of the implementation or the going live date. So you've all been provided copies of the recommended new policies that were created by our attorney, Drummond and Woodson, in conjunction with Maine School Management Association. And we have policies AC, which is non-discrimination, equal opportunity, and affirmative action, and then multiple other policies. So maybe we could go through each and individual one. And we have Nancy Fortier-Brown, who just joined us. Hi, Nancy. So the first one, if you want to look at that, I went through it. And if you will recall, back at, I think it was your last school board meeting, you approved the hiring of Terry McGuire to serve in the capacity as the affirmative action officer and the Title IX coordinator. So as all of these policies refer to the AAO and the Title IX coordinator, please keep in mind that is Terry McGuire. As I looked at policy AC, the only changes that I would make are on a couple places where it says school unit. I'm going to change that to MSAD11, just to make it clear that this is an MSAD11 policy. But there is no other substantial change that I would make. I would note that on page 2, in bold, it says that there should be a job description for this coordinator. I do not presently have a job description for these positions. I have asked my back office, my business office, our accounts payable person has some time available to do a little bit of some HR work. And so she is in the process of doing the research and trying to help us develop a job description that I can then bring forward to you at a future meeting.
Pat, one clarification. Is Terry both the AAO and the Title IX coordinator? They're two separate roles, right? As they have them listed?
We have, as the Drummond and Woodson has recommended, that they be the same person.
Okay.
That's what we have done. So Terry is both.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. It looks like Becky Fless has joined our group as well. Hi, Becky. So I guess I would say,
do you need me? I'm here.
We don't, but you're welcome to stay.
That's okay. I have like floors I need to sweep and things like that. So that I don't want to do, but I should.
Tony's in charge, Becky. You trust him? Tony's in charge. I don't know.
I'm in charge.
I see in better hands than with Tony, or we are so well equipped, period. That's
I'm
all.
happy to give you a break from the floors, but
I have a puppy and he sheds. He
Oh.
shoots there, especially when it's hot. So anyway, I won't interrupt. I just wanted to
Okay,
know that I wasn't needed. And thank you so much. I'll talk to you all later.
thank you. Bye, Becky.
Bye.
So that is the only recommended change to policy AC that I have. I guess I would ask committee members if you have any questions or any other recommended changes. No?
it makes sense to me.
Okay.
Actually,
Yeah.
Pat, do you have any concerns or do you need any help coming up with the job description?
I don't know the answer to that yet, Tony. Amanda's going to do some research. She's going to look to see what is out there from other school districts around the state of Maine. And we'll take that information and use it as a foundation to help build ours in this district. So hopefully I'll find something and it'll be relatively easy to put it together. We will, of course, run that by Terry McGuire as well and get her input. But if we find that's a problem, I can certainly let you know.
Perfect.
So if we're all set with AC, I would move on to ACAA, which is harassment and sexual harassment of students. The only change that I made here was, again, first paragraph, second sentence, I added in MSAD11 to make it clear that it's an MSAD11 school board policy. Everything else I kept as recommended by the attorneys. Any question? We're all good? Okay. All right. Once we get to policy ACAA-R, this is student discrimination / harassment in Title IX sexual harassment complaint procedures. I have highlighted a number of things. So I'd like to go through those with you to get your input and feedback. So one, there's an introductory note for you to read. Of course, that will not remain a part of the policy. On page, the real page 1 of 18, I've added MSAD11 school board, again, so that we know it's MSAD11. I deleted the note that's in bold, where they talk about the the combining of the affirmative action officer and Title IX coordinator. I've inserted I will insert Terry McGuire's contact information. So that will need to stay in here so that families, students, staff know who to reach out to. The next change that I would have would be on page 6. Page 6, number 10. We have the option of saying that the investigation will be completed within 40 calendar or 40 business days. My recommendation would be business days. That gives us a little more time since we're generally not working on the weekend. That option exists throughout this entire policy. So my recommendation, rather than going through every single individual one, my recommendation is that we change all of the calendar days to be business days so that they are applied consistently throughout the policy. Is that acceptable?
Can we go just a quick look at, is there an upside to having just the calendar days, which makes it a much shorter scope?
Well, there might be an upside in the situation in which someone can appeal or they can submit a claim. It may behoove the district to only give someone calendar days versus business days. But I feel like if we're asking for business days because we get so busy, I feel like it's only fair to apply that rule or that thought process throughout the entire policy. It also becomes a management issue if in some cases we require calendar days and other things we require business days.
Yep, I like the consistency of the business days side of that myself.
Hey, Pat, just a quick question on that. What happens over vacation? school vacations, is that considered a business day or not for administrative staff?
For administrative staff, it probably would constitute a business day because many of us work.
Okay,
I would have to confirm that with our attorney. The attorney may say a business day actually follows the school calendar. And if it follows the school calendar, then it would not be deemed a business day.
because
So-
the only reason I'm asking is that would stretch it out potentially 5 more days, you know?
Correct. Right.
Good point.
Hey, Pat, I had a comment specifically on what you said, number 10 on page 6, with the differentiation of calendar versus business days. To me, it seemed like 40 calendar days was long, but the way you explained it in the big picture with 9 million other things going on, it makes sense to me. But so I'm good to go with saying business days for everything. Just my 2 cents.
I think business days works, Pat, and not that we're going to take all 40 days, right? I mean,
Correct.
stuff like that. I mean, we might, but I mean, investigations such as that are relatively serious, so they should get wrapped up rather quickly when we can, right?
Absolutely.
So
Alyssa?
Yeah,
like
I
business
agree.
Oh.
I was going to say exactly what Matt just said. The 40 days, whichever one we pick is the high end, and I agree with your rationale. So thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with Matt and Alyssa. I mean, we certainly should wrap it up as soon as we're able. We don't want to extend it to the last minute, but there are sometimes things that occur that are beyond our control. So having that
Right.
flexibility is really helpful. Okay, any other comments on that? Okay, then my next one. All right, on page 7, in the middle of the page, there is a note that the board should decide whether to allow appeals of the superintendent's decisions to the board. They recommend discussing that option with legal counsel before drafting such language. So you need to decide whether number 5, where it says the superintendent's decision shall be final, or whether you want the board to serve as another appeal body. If you want the board to be another appeal body, then we'll have to go back to our attorney to get their recommended language.
Okay, this part of this policy is new.
Yes, this
We don't-
is very new.
We don't have a precedent.
No, we do not. Right now, in most of the practices that we have in place for investigations, like if there's an investigation because of a student issue or staff issue, I don't believe you have any current policy that says it comes to the board for an appeal. Now, if you have like a staff member who is discharged, then that staff member can request a hearing, and that hearing would indeed go to the board. But that's the only thing I can think of right now that would be closely aligned to this.
I had spoken to a Pat is working with a mentor who is very familiar with the Title IX regulations because she's been at the college level for a long time. And she said that sometimes you'll have the principals be the determination person for the and then the superintendent is the appeals person. So there is some flexibility.
And thank you for that. And for those of you, if you've read this policy, you will see later on where you have to identify a decision maker. And that decision maker is not the superintendent, because the superintendent has to be the person who does the appeals. So you're right, there's already going to be other individuals who are involved in that decision-making process. And once we get there, you will see that I will recommend that it be the appropriate building principal or the appropriate supervisor.
I feel like we don't need to know, that's how I feel about it. As a parent, I think that's the appropriate thing. It should go to you and that suffices. I don't think it's any of our business, quite frankly. If it involves a student, yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Other people's thoughts?
Yeah,
The only thing I would think, I agree with what she just said, but the one thing that I would be somewhat concerned about would be if there's any fiscal liability to the district. I don't know if there would be in any circumstance.
Any
Um,
fiscal liability, as I've mentioned before, Matt, we are always open to there being
Oh, I know.
liability. So,
I know.
if the policy says that my decision is final, or whoever the superintendent is, the decision is final, that doesn't mean that a family or a staff member can't hire an attorney and try to sue the school district as a result of that decision. But as long as we follow your policy and that we are making decisions that are based on what you'll see later in the policy, the term that they use is preponderance of evidence. And as long as we're doing that and we can document that the decision was made based on that evidence, based on the thorough investigation and following our policy to the T, we should be safe.
Okay.
Yeah, since I'm kind of new, Pat, the board approves you or whomever as the superintendent, right?
Correct.
So then I think if you speak for the board, there shouldn't be I wouldn't have a whole lot of heartburn with that.
Okay.
What's your feeling on this, Pat? Do you feel comfortable being the ultimate decision maker, or would you prefer that we are?
No, I mean, I'm fine in making that final decision. I think, Alyssa hit it head on, that there are certain situations where it might be confidential. And being able to address a situation with a family, with a student who's maybe nervous about coming forward, doing it in that setting, I think makes it more comfortable for families. Whereas if they have to come to the board, now it's almost like an expulsion hearing, right? And you're doing it in front of the board, and it can be very intimidating. And in some cases, it could prevent some families from moving forward with the appeal process.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that decision.
I'm sold.
Tony, are you okay with it?
absolutely, yeah. Just echo what everyone said. I think it's a good discussion, and I appreciate the reflection. But I like, I like your position. Hearing the appeals, I think that makes a lot of sense. Also,
Sorry, I was going to ask Nancy. Can I come back to you, Nancy? I see your head shaking. You're comfortable with that?
I am. I think sometimes the less intimidating for the family, the better it is from personal experience.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I mean, on a business level.
Right.
and
Tony?
I just wanted to add that, and I know we have a role with expulsions. I really don't want to get the board into micromanaging, so to speak. I mean, and again, not to discredit the delicacy of some of these situations too, but I fully support you being in that position.
Okay, great. Then I will delete that section. We'll just leave it as is. So moving forward with this same policy, let's see where my next notes are located. Page 14, determination of responsibility. This is where the policy says that the decision maker cannot be the investigator or the Title IX coordinator, and that person must receive training. If the appeals are to be heard by me, then we need to have someone else who is determined to be the decision maker. So this is where I would recommend that the appropriate building principal or supervisor be designated in that role.
Pat,
Yes.
is there any way that we could talk about having an administrator, but because sometimes the building administrator might not be the most appropriate, but maybe another principal. A suggestion from Donna this afternoon.
Yes, what about a supervisor? Are you comfortable in saying, and a building principal or supervisor without identifying the appropriate one?
I think that's fair.
Okay,
I like that too, actually. I hear what Terry's saying about the administrative part. They're kind of in the nitty gritty, right? So supervisor more reflects they'll receive the training and take that, cautionary with them that they know it's a sensitive subject. Yep.
so what I would do if you're on board is, because the policy continues to refer to the decision maker, my thought would be to put after, in number 1, where it says the decision maker, I would put in parentheses a building principal or supervisor and just leave it at that. That way we don't have to find every time where it says decision maker, we don't have to change it to a building principal or supervisor. Does that make sense
Yeah.
to do
very
that way?
much. Yep.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so everyone's all right with that?
Yep.
Okay, I see heads shaking. On page 15, this is number 4. There's a note here that should have been in bold by them, but there's a note that says school units can use clear and convincing standard, but we recommend retaining the preponderance standard that school units use in most other cases. So I'm not sure that I can clearly articulate to you the difference between the two, but if they are recommending that we stick with preponderance of evidence, I would recommend we follow their recommendation.
I agree.
Makes sense to me.
Okay. All right, then. So number 8 on page 16. So this talks about the Title IX regulations require that school units provide a range, not an exhaustive list, of measures that would be used to ensure the complainant's equal access to school units, programs, and activities. The school board must include a range of disciplinary sanctions that may be imposed. They've provided examples below, but what this note shows is that you do have the ability to revise that list if you believe it is necessary and appropriate. As I looked through it and read through, I couldn't come up with any other examples to add. I see Terry shaking her head. You agree? Okay. And I assume that Donna probably said the same thing then? Okay. What are your thoughts, committee members?
Donna hadn't seen the document yet, but we talked about the results.
Okay.
It seems to me like it covers everything with only it being 3 bullets, but it kind of gets specific. So it gives us the ability to use any of those things listed, right? So I think that's appropriate.
Yeah, and it also says that these are examples.
Right.
So if in a year or two, we determine that there is another approach we wish to use, this policy wouldn't prevent us from doing so.
Agreed.
It's just helpful to have as many examples as possible.
That's what I'm thinking. The bulleted list
parents
is easy. Yeah.
And I think some of those bullets are vague enough that you can be creative, like restorative justice, so it can be stretched to incorporate a whole bunch of different things.
Right.
I was just thinking that. Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
We've got
Okay.
flexibility. Yep.
So everyone's okay with that? I didn't hear any opposition. Okay, I
Good.
see some thumbs up.
Yes, I'm good.
Okay, great. Then under appeals, on page 17, Again, there's another note, and it says that the person hearing an appeal cannot be a decision maker or the Title IX coordinator. They recommended that the superintendent be the one to consider appeals. We've already talked about that. That's, I think, already been determined, so we probably don't need to worry about it. And that is all that I have with that policy. Are you all set with policy ACAA-R?
I'm good.
Okay, so as we reviewed, okay, great.
Good.
Thank you. Then the next policy is ACAB. It's it's harassment and sexual harassment of school employees. The only change that I made here is in the first paragraph, second sentence, where it talks about board policy. I again just made an addition that would say the MSAD11 school board policy. And so that way it's clear that it's our policy and not another organization. Is that one okay?
Looks good.
All right,
Yes.
It looked good to me, Pat.
great. Then that brings us then to the last policy. So I appreciate your patience with this. This policy is ACAB-R, and it is the Employee Discrimination, Harassment, and Title IX Sexual Harassment Complaint Procedures. Again, the first page was just an introductory note from our attorneys for you to review. The actual policy is like on the next page, but page 1, this is where we have to insert Terry McGuire's name and her contact information once again. I would delete the note where it says we refer to a combined affirmative action officer and Title IX coordinator. And then my next one, on page 4, under discrimination, harassment, complaint procedures, there's just another note section that says that it tracks the procedures in earlier versions. I would eliminate that. That is just kind of an information piece for you as you review this policy.
Pat,
This,
I'm looking at the right one. So the
Yeah, I'm not sure we have this one, Pat.
I know, I was just looking, it's in the agenda, but I don't think we got the full policy.
oh, you didn't?
No, because the next one's the campus one, I see, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
no,
Yeah,
you
we go
should have
from
received.
ACAB to the open campus.
Sorry, that should have been, it was part of the packet that was supposed to go to you. So it is very similar to the ACAA-R. ACAA-R, the one that you just reviewed, was the student discrimination harassment. This one that I'm referring to is the ACAB, which is the employee discrimination. So it's slightly different, but it's also very, very similar. I will make sure that you receive a copy of that. My sincere apologies. The types of decisions I was hoping for you to make today are identical to the decisions that you just made for the other policy. That would be, instead of using calendar days, we would use business days. That the whether the school board should be included as part of the appeal process, or whether that remains the responsibility of the superintendent and that the decision is final with the superintendent. And then I think the other big decision is who that decision maker should be. Yeah. And then back to the preponderance of evidence. Should we use that language? There is nothing else in here that is any different than the previous policy that we just reviewed. So I guess given that, I'm wondering if we could move forward with it this evening, and I will send you a copy of it tomorrow or tonight, even if I can find it before I go home. I will send you that as an attachment so that you can review it and have it in your hands. We are we are constricted here with timelines. As I mentioned, these policies really need to be approved by the board at your next board meeting because they go into effect August 14th. Now, your attorneys and Main School Management, they're also asking that you make an exception to your current policy approval process, which is policy BG-R. Your policy BG-R says that policies have to go through a 2 reading process.
Mhm.
And in order to have these policies in effect to meet the August 14th deadline, you would need to make an exception to this policy BG-R to forego the 2 reading process and to adopt them with just 1 reading. So I'm a little anxious. We only received these policies this month. So I haven't been sitting on them. We've been waiting for our organizations to provide them to us. So that's kind of why I'm pushing, if you are comfortable with approving ACAB based on the information that I just provided, knowing it's almost identical to ACAA-R, and then I will send you a copy of that policy after this meeting.
I'm comfortable doing that.
Yeah, I agree.
I
So
agree.
am I.
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
okay.
great. Great, thank you. Then I will make sure I send that out. And in the meantime, between now and next board meeting, if you have an issue, please, please make sure you reach out to me and we'll talk about that and get that squared away. I am going to need you to take a motion on these policies and making a recommendation to bring them forward to the board for a reading. But in addition, I would also like for you to make a motion or a recommendation to the full board to make an official exception to policy BG-R. Now, before I do that, however, I would like for us to discuss the open and closed campus policy. Mr. Kempton is online and is requesting modification that we would also need to have in place for the start of school. So that would also fall under the exception to policy BG-R. Does that all make sense? Okay. So are you ready to switch over to open and closed campus policy, which is JHCA?
Yes.
Okay, I see a thumbs up. So, Mr. Kempton, I'm going to
Hello.
turn this over to you. If you would please speak to the board about the changes that you would like to see in this particular policy.
Sure. So can everyone hear me okay?
Mhm.
Yes.
Great. So just a couple minor changes as we head into the fall with the pandemic still in place. As you can all imagine, we're trying to work through the guidelines that are being disseminated by the state and the community work that we're doing in the district. So a couple things to try to alleviate some of the numbers in the building, as well as honor some of the work that our kids did during the second semester, during the remote learning. So the adjustments would be that typically we have the open campus privilege be based on honor roll grades. And what we were going to do based on how we ended school last year is base open campus on first semester grades versus second semester grades. Simply because we ended with essentially a pass-fail system with numbers attached to them. So that was one adjustment, but then as we were thinking about it, we had a fair number of kids that really excelled in that environment and worked really hard to pass all their classes and do what they were expected to do in less than ideal time. So what we would like to do is make open campus available to juniors and seniors that passed all of their courses and do not have any incompletes from the second semester as well. And what that would do is that would open up for more students to have the opportunity to exercise the open campus privilege. Granted, they would have to have their parents' permission, so unless they were 18. But it would help us reduce numbers in study halls and in the cafeteria and the library, et cetera, which is going to be an important aspect of what we do in the fall. That would be one adjustment, and I'd open that up for any discussion or questions that you have before I move on.
Chad, hey, it's Tony V. Thanks so much for bringing this forward. Any idea of how many students this would impact?
It would bring, in the junior and senior class, it would bring about an additional, I think it was 80 students, give or take a couple, that would be eligible for the privilege, given that their parents would approve of it.
Do most students, when they do have it, do they take advantage of it?
Yes. They take advantage of it because they're not assigned to a study hall. And so if they need to go home to grab items for, after school activities, or if they want to go down to McDonald's, Subway, Dunkin' Donuts to get something to drink, they could do that, or go home for lunch. Typically, those are the things that we see open campus kids doing.
This is
Comments
Tony.
from others?
Chad, is this something that's just going to be a temporary thing this year, and
Yeah.
we'll look at it again maybe when things get back to normal, if they ever do?
Yes, I would simply ask, a lot of this is based on the fact that we were 100% remote second semester from March on.
Right.
So major disruption. And when we first came out with that we were going to base it on first semester grades, I had a decent amount of feedback from kids who worked really hard during the second semester to do their best and pass all their classes and do all their assignments. And I think it's important to recognize those kids for that work in those conditions.
Yeah, I think
And
that's
so-
fair.
And Matt, just to respond, what I would recommend that we do is include language in the policy that would specify that we will allow this based on data from the 2019-2020 school year. So we're singling out that we're making this allowance based on that year only.
This would be a 1-year adjustment,
Right.
really
Yeah,
a
I'd
one
support that,
semester
Chad.
adjustment.
How do others feel? Thumbs up, thumbs down, feedback?
I'm good. If the leader of the school is willing to approve of it and for the kids worked hard, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm fine as well.
I agree. I always worry about kids being on the road though, but that would be my only apprehension.
Okay. And John, you're all set?
Yes, yep, I'm all set with it.
Great. Thank you. And so, Mr. Kempton, the next item.
The next one is something that we do on a case-by-case basis. It's what I refer to, or what we refer to as amended day. And so what we are requesting is students, all grade levels, grades 9 through 12, who have a study hall during either first period or fourth period, who maintain a grade of an 80 or better in all of their classes, have their own transportation or can be transported by a parent or family member. Again, have their parents' approval, will be allowed to either arrive late to school, meaning that they wouldn't have to come in for study hall, or they could leave early from school and not attend the last period study hall. This is in part with a numbers aspect of kids in the building with being in the pandemic, and reducing the numbers of kids in the school, as well as we are going to have some kids and some family members that are nervous about their kids being in school and being around that number of people. And if we can minimize their time in the building a little bit by allowing them to either come in late, due to a study hall, or leave early and not stay in the study hall, providing that they're doing their academic work, that they be allowed to do so.
Makes sense to me.
Yep. Makes
Me
sense.
too.
How many students would this impact, Chad?
We have typically 30 to 50 students per period that have a study hall. And so you'd have a period 1O and a 1B, and then a 4O and a 4B. Some kids, they would have maybe 2 study halls in one day, and it might be both 1 and 4, or it could be just period 1, or one of the other ones. So it's a pretty good mix of scenarios that could play out based on kids' schedules being really independent of each other.
Any opposition to this proposal? Okay, I
And
see
again,
head shaking no.
this would be, basically a 1-year exception, simply because of the pandemic. And I think it might ease up some family members that are uneasy about being in school if they know that their child was able to come in, go to their classes, and then head home. And I think that might help.
Yeah, especially since it will be mandatory that students wear masks all day.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, and I think it just helps with those, right? Like we're talking about transportation, as we all are, right? It may just alleviate some of those volumes of students leaving at the same time. Yep.
correct. Yep, correct. Okay, if there's no opposition, Chad, your next one?
I think that was it.
What about the community service? Last year, the school board, at the end of the year, the school board made a modification to the number of hours that students are going to have to complete due to them being out of school last year for
Yeah.
4 months. As a result of that, do we need to modify the number 1 where it says the student is enrolled in 5 courses or 5 credit semesters and have completed so many so many hours for community service?
Yes, that's right. So those numbers would be reduced by that 7.5 hours that we reduced the requirement. So for grade 11, first semester would be 22.5 versus 30. Grade 12 would be 37.5 versus 45. And then second semester, it would be prorated up as well, so.
Okay. Is everyone okay that we make that adjustment as well?
Yep,
Okay.
I'm fine with it.
Awesome. Then, Mr. Kempton, you and I need to work together to get a draft policy with these changes made, and we
Okay.
need to get that out to the policy committee. This will have to be included in the board packet that will be put together on Thursday and will be released for the public on Friday. So if you have some recommended language that you want to send to me tomorrow, we will put it in the existing policy. We'll draft it up and we will disseminate that to committee members.
So what I can do is take a copy of the existing policy, make a copy of it, put the edits in there and then we can review them
Yes,
on this conversation?
yes.
Okay, we can do that. That'd be great.
Awesome. Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
So
everyone.
with, I'm sorry.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kempton. So that's all we have for an agenda. So what we need then is we need 2 motions. One, to recommend that the policies that we've reviewed, that they be sent to the full school board for consideration. And then the second motion would be to recommend to the school board that they make an exception to policy BG-R to forego the requirement for 2 readings on all of these policies.
I'll make the first motion that we send the policies review as a packet. Can I say that?
Okay, that was Matt Marshall.
Sorry, it's Tony.
Oh, sorry, Tony.
I can second that. It's Alyssa.
All right, thank you. So I can do the roll call if you would like, Tony.
Yep. Any discussion? I think we do the vote. Motion, second discussion. All right. Yeah, seeing none, yes. Pat, if you could do the vote.
Okay, so Tony,
Yay.
Matt Lillibridge,
Yay.
Alyssa Tracy,
Yay.
Matt Marshall,
Yay.
John Umlin,
Yay.
Nancy Fortier Brown.
Yay.
Great, that's unanimous. So then we need a motion to recommend to the board the exception to policy BG-R.
I'll make that motion. Nancy?
And second, Tony. Any discussion? Seeing none.
Okay, so Tony,
Yay.
Matt Lillibridge,
Yay.
Alyssa Tracy,
Yay.
Matt Marshall,
Yay.
John Umlin,
Yay.
Nancy Fortier Brown.
Yay.
Great. That's all that we have for this evening.
Wow.
Yeah,
Thank
not
you
bad.
for all your work and for Terry's mentorship there too, as you mentioned. Excellent.
Yeah, I think John is going to be a great assistance to us. So,
Good.
all right. So
Right.
it is 5:50.
All right. Meeting adjourned.
Meeting adjourned.